We begin with Kanemia heading to the dungeon with a guard. The guard wonders if she truly plans to meet the prisoner, and she calmly says yes. However, he warns that the person is not worth meeting because the boy was found to be an unknown intruder on the Grand Duke's hunting grounds. Moreover, when he was found, he was covered in someone else's blood. Because of this, the guard recalls the moment they first discovered him. At that time, he was shocked to see that the intruder was just a child, so he told him the land belonged to the Grand Duchy and warned him to leave before being arrested for trespassing. Yet the boy responded strangely, saying he thought he had already killed all of them. But there were still more left. Remembering this again makes the guard uneasy because the child clearly did not seem normal. In the present moment, he admits he still has a bad feeling about him. Nevertheless, our girl calmly says it is fine because she has her own reasons and asks him to take her there. The guard agrees, and she thanks him. Honestly, hearing that kind of story would make anyone uneasy. Meanwhile, the maid thinks their lady deserves thanks because she believes their lady is the best. As they continue, the guard warns her to watch her step and even offers to carry her, but she refuses. The maid then asks her to at least hold her hand, and she finally agrees. At that moment, Kanemia quietly thinks she is sorry for being stubborn, yet she must meet that child for a reason. Then we learn the truth behind her thoughts. First, she has been reincarnated as Kanemia Leon. Second, this world is actually the setting of a web novel she once read in her past life called The Chronicles of Aldium. Third, Kanemia Leon is destined to die soon. She remembers realizing this after her father passed away when she woke from a dream and understood that the memories were from a past life. That was the moment she realized she was living inside the world of a novel, and not even a special one, but a very common fantasy story. The biggest shock was realizing she had become this character herself. Soon after that discovery, the maid Vanessa noticed that she had woken up on her own that morning. From there, we learn about the infamous villainous Kanemia Leon and the painful history of her family. Her grandfather, Kenneth Leon, was known as the righteous scoundrel, a man who openly declared that he was cleaning up the corruption left by nobles across the empire and that they should pay for their sins with both their lives and their wealth. He executed many corrupt nobles, yet this path eventually brought revenge, and he was poisoned and murdered. After him came her mother, Eiyan Leon, once called the hero of the empire. She possessed unmatched sword skill and conquered many neighboring kingdoms, yet during a victory celebration, she was suddenly assassinated by enemies seeking revenge. Attention then turns to her father, Troy Leon. In a painful memory, he cries out to his beloved, begging her not to leave him behind. Despite his grief, he inherits the title of Grand Duke and takes responsibility for the family. In addition, blessed with noble blood and striking looks, he starts a business to rebuild the Leon family and provide for his daughter. He boldly asks many ladies to invest in his business, and surprisingly, they happily agree. With the money he gathers through charm and connections, his business succeeds. However, tragedy strikes again when he is murdered for revenge after someone angrily accuses him of trying to seduce them and stabs him through the heart. Left alone, Kanemia becomes the center of cruel rumors. People begin calling her the tyrannical granddaughter, the aggressive daughter, and the beautiful villainess of the Leon family. Soon, she becomes known everywhere as the wicked heiress. With a history like this, it almost feels like fate keeps attacking that family. As time passes, our girl tries to defend herself, saying she may have trained in swordsmanship, but she has never harmed anyone. She even wonders if she resembles her father and says that should not be a bad thing. Sadly, no one supports her. Because of endless suspicion and harsh judgment, her heart slowly twists and she eventually becomes the ruthless ruler people already believed her to be. Her cruel name spreads everywhere, and when suffering citizens beg for mercy, the story's protagonist finally sends her to the guillotine. Facing death, she thinks she does not want to die. Later, another memory appears. She sits quietly while her maid, Vanessa, gives her a gift from a distant land, explaining that the doll reminds her of the lady because its blushing cheeks are cute. Toby suddenly calls out Vanessa's name, and Kanemia realizes the gift came because the maid noticed she had been feeling down. She thanks her, and Vanessa happily says she is glad it was liked. Yet while looking at the doll, Kanemia suddenly wonders if it looks like a monster. Vanessa asks what monster she means, and suddenly she remembers something important from her past life. That creature was a huge success in the original novel because the protagonist found it early and used it to gain fame and success. Because of that memory, Kinemia quickly writes down the key information she remembers from the story. She thinks that if she recruits those powerful characters before the protagonist does, she might change her fate, although she decides she must avoid anyone who holds a grudge against her. One of those people is Eiyan, a candidate to become the Tower Master and a mysterious figure who often helps the protagonist in times of crisis. She realizes he is one of the most powerful characters, which makes meeting him tempting, yet he is also dangerous because, in the original story, he helped send her to the guillotine. Because of that memory, we return to the present moment in the dungeon. Our girl thinks she should avoid dangerous people because she does not want to gamble with her fate. She also remembers that in the original story she captured Eiyan and treated him like a plaything inside the Grand Duke's castle. However, she now plans to treat him kindly and send him away without leaving any grudge. Soon the guard announces that they have arrived. Inside the cell, Kinemia meets Eiyan. He speaks about the formal greeting of the Leon family, mentions bowing before the lion's wings, and even calls her the Grand Duchess. She quickly rejects the strange title and says that, if she is a lady, then she is simply a lady, asking why he keeps using the Grand Duchess title. He casually explains that he said it twice just to make a good impression. She replies that he does not need to impress her. However, he suddenly asks whether she plans to kill him immediately, since the Grand Duchess is known for being ruthless. She calmly answers that she will not kill him. The guard is shocked when she orders the prisoner released. Eiyan becomes suspicious and wonders if she is setting him free only to hunt him later for sport. Kinemia becomes irritated and asks what kind of person he thinks she is, explaining that she simply does not dare to kill someone like Rakasha. The guard is stunned and blurts out that Rakasha is the tower's second-in-command, asking how she knows. At the same time, Eiyan asks how she knows his identity. She refuses to explain and simply warns him not to get caught again, then tells him to leave. Afterward, she thinks this is the perfect clean break and that removing this grudge from her future makes her feel relieved. However, a few days later, something unexpected happens. She meets Eiyan again in prison. He greets her casually, which confuses her, and she asks why he is still there. He simply explains that he got caught again. We continue with Kinemia watching the strange scene in the prison as the guard speaks to Eiyan and offers him food. The guard casually asks if he wants to eat, but he only asks if there is anything else and mentions that the pie he ate yesterday was delicious. The guard explains that the pie is only available on Wednesdays, and he happily says he is looking forward to next Wednesday. Kinemia suddenly questions whether he plans to get caught again just for that pie and points out that he has already been caught 7 times. He simply repeats that the pie was good. Confused, she wonders if he holds a grudge against her, but he asks if they have even met before to have one. Realizing that cannot be the case, she confirms there is no grudge, and he calmly agrees. She then asks why he keeps getting caught, and the guard changes the subject, mentioning he heard she is recruiting a knight. Kinemia becomes frustrated and asks if the guard told him that, and he apologizes quickly. Eiyan announces he wants to apply for the knight position. Kinemia is confused since he is a rikisha and should be busy with the magic tower, but he casually says he is not that busy and is talented anyway. She explains that the position is temporary and involves following her all day in a tough job. He says it sounds great and even suggests he can just get caught again if she refuses. Our girl thinks deeply, wondering about his motives and why he is so determined. Realizing that forcing someone away who came willingly could create a grudge, she decides to allow it until his injuries heal, and he happily agrees. She quietly thinks she will keep him close for now and send him away once he recovers. Soon after, Eiyan stands behind her as her knight, and some maids notice and whisper. One asks if he is her new knight, and another confirms it, mentioning the rumors that he is a rikisha and commenting on his looks. A maid is shocked to learn he is a candidate for the Magic Tower Master. They gossip that he once trespassed into the territory and was imprisoned, but Kinemia recognized him and released him, and he volunteered to be her knight out of gratitude. The maids admire Kinemia for having a rikisha as a knight and for staying strong despite cruel rumors, praising her dignity and saying she resembles her mother. Vanessa approaches Kinemia and asks if she is heading to the conference room, offering cookies for energy and handing them to Eiyan. Kinemia thanks her politely and waves goodbye as she leaves. Suddenly, Eiyan throws the snacks out the window. Kinemia is shocked and asks why, and he says he does not want to eat. She scolds him, saying that if he does not want it, he should have said so because someone prepared it with effort. He responds coldly, asking why that matters. Kinemia thinks he is completely unstable and dangerously strange. She turns and tells him they should go to the meeting before being late. I would seriously start wondering if keeping him around was a good idea. In the next scene, We are in the meeting hall where several retainers are already talking. A man says it is time to start getting ready. A royal lady asks what he means, and he explains that the Grand Duchy is vacant and wonders how long Kinemia will remain a Grand Duchess. Another lady responds that the emperor is delaying approval, and receiving a title brings responsibility that could become a burden. A third lady disagrees, saying Kinemia is intelligent and should not be dismissed because she is young. She adds that she will follow whatever Kinemia wishes because the matter cannot be resolved by debate, and points out that the Lian family's position in the empire has weakened. The door opens, and she enters with Eiyan. The lady quietly wonders if he's the Rikisha from the rumors, noticing he is standing instead of Vanessa. Kinemia calmly says everyone has gathered. Another lady notices the atmosphere feels different. As head of the Lian family, Kinemia seems aware of her role, and the retainers have gone through many hardships together. Until now, they made the decisions, but now she has plans of her own and can no longer act like a child, showing the dignity of a true master. As Kinemia approaches the chair, she says it is too high. One retainer offers help, but another man questions why she arrived with a rikisha instead of Vanessa and why her demeanor is different. Kinemia thinks she can hear everything people are saying and remembers that Vanessa used to sit her down before. From now on, she must do it herself, because whining for help to climb a chair would not suit a Grand Duchess. Interestingly, one man has the same thought. She attempts to climb the chair herself but slips and falls, shocking everyone. The retainers turn away, pretending they did not see anything. One claims he was looking out the window and another says the Grand Duchess looks beautiful today. Kinemia shyly asks if that is true. Eiyan quietly lifts her onto the chair, saying he did not think she could climb alone. The men respond that she could sit alone, only her legs are a bit short. One adds that she is a true lady, smaller now but will grow taller once mature. Someone jokes that calling her a little fairy is too much. Eiyan calmly says the wings of a little fairy can only be seen by kind-hearted people, so the man cannot see them. The man asks if he is being called bad, and Eiyan confirms that is why he cannot see the wings. Kinemia thinks desperately that they should stop because it is humiliating. Honestly, if I were there, I would probably wish the floor would open and swallow me. We're introduced to Kinemia and Eiyan on a busy market day, and we quickly get a sense of just how crowded the place is. Kinemia notices this immediately and comments on it, and they both tell the driver that they'll return later, receiving a careful warning to be cautious. Then Eiyan asks her what she's looking for, and she directs him to a shop with a frog sign where the artisans she wants to find are located. He confirms if she means the same artisans from yesterday's meeting, and she nods. In her memory, we see the meeting unfold as Kinemia explains her plan to make slime toys from the monster byproducts they collect. One of the retirees is surprised by the idea, but she insists they are fun for kids, and she already knows an artisan who can make them. Everyone claps for her, impressed by her initiative, and one man calls her a business planner, while another crowns her the supreme ruler of the slime world. Back in the present, Eiyan teases her about being the queen of slime, but she brushes it off, thinking to herself that it isn't really slime she's commissioning. He questions whether she needs to search for them herself, reminding her she has subordinates, but she says she has her reasons and wants him to alert her if he sees a frog sign. As she navigates the market, she wonders where the shop is, recalling that it should be on this street. She pushes through the crowd, carefully making her way and reminding herself not to lose sight of Eiyan. Looking back, she realizes he isn't there, and panic sets in as she searches for him, calling out his name. A man notices and points her in the right direction, and she thanks him, but then someone bumps into her. The man offers to clear a path and guides her straight, assuring that she will find her friend if she continues forward. Our girl thanks him again and presses on, determined to locate Eiyan amid the bustling chaos. We're brought back to Kinemia as she follows the man who is supposed to guide her, and immediately her instincts tell her something is wrong. She thinks the place feels far too secluded and worries that she should leave. She tells him she needs to go back to the main street because she left something, but he grabs her hand and panic hits as she tells him to let go. He comments on her strength, and she picks up a stick, warning him not to come closer. He teases her about the stick, and she realizes just how reckless she has been, blindly following him after Eiyan disappeared. She scolds herself in her mind, thinking, Eiyan, Kreutz, you crazy idiot. After making such a fuss about being assigned as a bodyguard, where the hell is he and what is he even doing? This moment is tense, and I think I'm also scared right now. A bird suddenly passes overhead and the scene shifts. On the roof, Eiyan watches everything from above and notices the same bird passing near the alley where Kinemia is held. He is scolded by the bird for only reaching out when he wants something, but he greets it, calling it master, claiming he came at the perfect time. He points out the debate below, and they discuss the research subject, noting that she has no magic but still recognizes him as a Rikasha. The bird doubts the situation, asking if he might have met her before, but he insists he wouldn't make a mistake. The master considers herself in danger, and he agrees it looks bad. Continuing the conversation with his master, which takes the form of a bird, he wonders how she could hide her magic while skillfully handling the broom, but is told to act and save her already. He finally appears in front of her, declaring he is there to rescue her. She questions where he has been, and he apologizes before snapping his fingers, causing the man holding her to feel sharp pain. Kinemia warns him to stop, fearing he will kill the man, but he coldly says that is the objective. I can't believe he is actually going this far. We see Eiyan accuse him of trying to kill her, and the man panics, coughing and gasping, thinking he can't breathe, while Louis demands he stop, insisting that murder and punishment are two different things. The man is filled with rage, thinking he will kill the little brat, but suddenly he falls to the ground, struck by one of three ladies who appear out of nowhere. They check whether Kinemia and Eiyan are okay, and one comments that market days attract strange people, advising them to come with a guardian next time. She thanks them, thinking how lucky it is that someone almost didn't die, while one of the ladies carries the man off to hand him to the guard. The first lady offers to guide them, and Kinemia explains she is looking for a weapons shop with a frog sign, which turns out to be their own shop. They arrive safely, and the lady tells them the shop is empty, inviting them to come in comfortably. Kinemia is struck by the skill of the behemoths, thinking she never expected to meet someone like them, while Eiyan asks if they are the Slimecrafts women. She affirms this, reflecting on how impressive their work is, though their business is not doing well. They notice the shop's quiet, peaceful vibe, and she quickly covers his mouth, redirecting the conversation to the equipment's excellence. The ladies praise her intelligence and ability to judge weapons and offer to give her a few items, but she politely declines, announcing she will buy everything and making an additional request. The sisters are surprised when she introduces herself as Kinemia Leon of the Leon family, and they are shocked at her status. Seated with them, she considers the taste of power, thinking about how their skills are exactly what she needs to solve a major problem with weapons corroding from monster blood. She explains she wants a new kind of weapon crafted under an exclusive contract with the behemoths, and the sisters, concerned about being bound unfairly, whisper to each other, which Kinemia hears, asserting her awareness. The scene continues as Kinemia holds her ground while the behemoth sisters, Lana and Sarah, debate. Lana jokes about being scammed by such a tiny, cute young lady, and Sarah reminds her not to judge by appearances, which Kinemia interrupts, saying she cannot hear them. In her mind, she plans carefully, realizing that since this era doesn't have crafting with monster materials, she must create the idea herself for her people. She wants to make a sword that can endure monsters, not one that needs to be discarded after every fight, and explains that the weapon must be durable. Sarah questions if her greatest desire is a sword that won't corrode from monster blood, and Kinemia confirms, proposing monster bones as material. Lana is shocked and Sarah hesitates, questioning why Kinemia would entrust such a task to countryside blacksmiths. Kinemia explains that handling monster material requires wielding aura, which they can do, and mentions that her mother recognized their skill when she saw them surge with aura. In her mind, she recalls knowing this from the original story, and Sarah acknowledges her mother's recognition while Lana recalls always hoping someone would appreciate their work. Kinemia thinks just a little more persuasion will win them over, offering fair contract terms with all equipment and materials provided. Eiyan watches silently, observing everything, thinking how surprising it is that Kinemia recognizes their aura, and even as a Vaikasha herself, she handles everything personally instead of sending subordinates. Suddenly, Sarah notices someone shouting Brian, and he dashes away, prompting Lana to pursue him with a weapon, calling him a perverted freak. Sarah also follows, apologizes to Kinemia, and suggests they continue the conversation later, then shouts after Lana to wait. We are drawn into the chaos as Lana and Sarah chase Brian through the street, shouting for him to stop while he continues running. Lana finally catches him and drags him to the ground, confronting him angrily about sneaking around her house. Brian protests, claiming he was only passing by, but she insists he was spying. Their argument escalates with Lana about to strike him with a hammer, calling him useless, until Sarah intervenes, reminding her of the last time they acted recklessly and lost customers. Lana resists, worried about him spying again, while Brian defends himself, pointing out that they have no proof and accusing them of framing him because their business is failing. She counters, blaming him for bad-mouthing their shop, and he argues that he only stopped by because the building belonged to his father, suggesting they improve their products instead of blaming others. The argument intensifies until Sayer steps in again, telling her to stop and just go back, while bystanders begin murmuring, speculating that the outburst is due to their failing business. Brian, still on the ground, complains that he came out only out of pity and that he is being treated unfairly, and the sisters' anger begins to fade as the crowd reacts with shock. Lana starts feeling guilty, and Brian demands an apology. "I would have walked away a long time ago," one might think, seeing how stubborn and emotional the whole situation becomes. The scene shifts as Lana and Sayer recall their childhood, remembering how Brian's mother scolded them when her child was bruised, making Sayer immediately bow and apologize, expressing deep regret while Lana watches in surprise. Kinemiya thinks to herself how much she hates seeing someone bow so humbly, but the moment passes, and Lana drops the hammer, telling Sayer it's time to go home. They leave together, and Brian laughs at their retreat, calling them a disgrace, which draws murmurs from the crowd about two young women running a blacksmith shop. Sayer listens as people gossip, thinking it's unfair that they are judged, and Lana apologizes again, recalling childhood memories with Sarah, the way they packed their things and held each other, promising to look out for one another despite having no one else. Sayer reflects on this as well, deciding that if no one else will believe in or support them, they must be each other's allies. She picks up the hammer with determination, ready to strike Brian, thinking she will protect Lana at all costs. Suddenly, the hammer disappears, leaving Sayer confused, while Brian holds his head, shocked that it is gone. Kinemiya steps in, commanding everyone to stop and declaring she will handle things from here. She points out that the hammer belongs to Sarah, who is stunned to see it moved, and then turns to Brian, demanding an immediate apology to Lana and Sarah. Finally, someone is standing up for them properly. We watch the tension rise as Brian stands and argues with Chloe, calling her a little kid who knows nothing and should stay out of it. He refuses to apologize and insists he was framed by Lana and Sayer, who were blinded by money. However, Kinemiya immediately calls it a lie and reminds him that he was peeping earlier. He denies it, but she calmly explains that she and the Behemoth sisters were discussing a contract involving a massive investment. Sayer adds that she did not accuse him just to squeeze money from him, yet he mocks them, saying beggars are always greedy and will do anything for money. At that moment, he begins to think deeply, wondering who Kinemiya really is. Her clothes show she is not some ordinary person, yet he has never seen her in the local circles. He assumes she must just be the daughter of a rich merchant and nothing special. Confident again, he crosses his arms and mocks the sisters' skill, claiming their poor work would never earn a contract, and that they probably plan to use him as an excuse to drain his father's wealth. Lana bursts with anger at his words, but Sayer quickly stops her. Then Kinemiya calmly asks if he has ever even held a behemoth sword or properly looked at a farming tool. He proudly answers that he has no reason to touch such things because of who his father is. She then points out his weak arms and says he has nothing to show except his father, and at that moment, we can almost feel his pride crack. I honestly think that line hits him right where it hurts. Just as the argument grows hotter, a voice suddenly interrupts the street, demanding to know what the commotion is. Brian turns to see the Count arrive and immediately feels lucky, thinking the timing is perfect and that he will make the arrogant child beg for forgiveness. He approaches confidently and claims he is being falsely accused. However, when the Count looks behind him and sees who made the accusation, his eyes widen in shock. The man quickly bows and greets Kinemiya as the Grand Duke of Leon's daughter. The mood in the street changes at once. The Count respectfully says he would have welcomed her had he known she was visiting, while she calmly explains that she came only to see the artisan they discussed earlier. Brian is stunned to realize the girl he insulted is the Grand Duke's daughter, and before he can recover, she asks the Count to handle the man who has been harassing the talented people she is interested in. Hearing this, the Count repeats the accusation with shock, and Lana and Sayer step forward to confirm everything, explaining how he spied on their house, spread rumors about their shop, insulted them in public, and even tried to raise his hand against them. Brian desperately claims it is all a misunderstanding, yet Kinemiya gives him a cold stare and orders him to apologize without repeating herself. Around them, the crowd begins whispering, realizing the sisters were telling the truth and that the man just insulted someone the Count himself bowed to. Fear finally takes over Brian, and before the situation worsens, he suddenly kneels on the ground and bows deeply, begging Lana and Sayer for forgiveness again and again. At that moment, I couldn't help thinking, karma really arrived fast for this guy. We continue watching the aftermath as two guards grab Brian and begin dragging him away, yet he still struggles and shouts that he has already apologized and should be released. However, the Count calmly reminds him that he came to investigate complaints about him, explaining that he has heard reports of him putting his hands on women and then trying to silence them with money. Even as the guards take him away, he keeps yelling that it is a false accusation and that everything is a setup. Nevertheless, the Count turns to Kanemiya and politely apologizes, saying he will handle the rest of the matter properly. She simply says she trusts that he will handle the payment properly. Afterward, Sae sincerely thanks her, admitting that if she had not stepped in, they might have been labeled murderers, and Lana also expresses deep gratitude. Kanemiya reflects silently that in the original story, the sisters were forced to wander the battlefield because of the stigma of being murderers, and she realizes that if she had arrived even a little later, the outcome could have been disastrous. Then she brushes off their thanks and instead asks if they have reconsidered the contract she proposed earlier, reminding them that she made a bold statement in front of everyone and that backing out now might make it seem like she was bluffing. The two sisters look at each other, smile, and admit they guess they have no choice, finally agreeing to sign the contract. In the next scene, we return to the castle, where a slime is suddenly presented to Chloe, leaving her surprised, because she never expected them to actually make one. Sae explains that leaving monster material unused would be wasteful and that making it was not very difficult, while Lana adds that the monster-repelling weapon will take more time and they wanted to show her something first, proudly saying she worked hard on the texture. Kanemiya touches it and reacts with simple curiosity, continuing to play with it as Sae asks how it feels. She admits that it is fun, which makes Lana happy, and she promises to make another one in a different color next time, asking whether pink or blue would be better. Meanwhile, in another place, Eiyan is speaking with his master, who appears as a bed. The master reminds him that the research has already confirmed that the young lady has no magical power and asks how long he plans to stay here. He calmly replies that he will remain until his wounds heal, though the master points out that it has already been months. He insists he was seriously injured, yet the master silently thinks he is lying. Still, the master tells him not to come back for now because the elders are furious over what he did. Eiyan casually argues that he only fought back when Ryan's gang attacked first and calls it self-defense, but the master angrily reminds him that wiping out an entire dozen tower mages can hardly be called self-defense. He replies that he at least spared Ryan, the elder's favorite, since he was the ringleader. Finally, he reveals his true intention. His research is not finished yet because one experiment remains, and he wants to see whether the Grand Duchess truly has something special. He is clearly planning something far bigger than he lets on. We are brought to a quiet training moment where Kanemiya practices with her sword while counting each swing, reaching 42, 43, 44, and 45 before finally slowing down from exhaustion. Eiyan notices her struggle and comments that she is very weak in the morning. She explains that it is due to low blood pressure and to her being extremely busy lately. At that moment, we see what she means as she remembers the endless work piling up around her. One person asks her to review the expansion plans for the blacksmith. Another brings a design draft for the engraving on the new weapon and asks for her opinion, and someone else reports that Balkayo Trading Company wants an exclusive deal to sell slime toys. Thinking back on all this work, she realizes that her original plan was only to benefit from the munchkin, and that overworking herself like this was never part of it. The exhaustion catches up to her, and she begins to fall asleep on her feet, yet Eiyan quickly catches her before she drops. He asks if she's okay. She thanks him, and she quietly admits to herself that the moment startled her. However, he teases her by pointing out that her face is red, asking if he caused some points, and she quickly turns away, saying it is obviously from training. Inside her mind, she admits that every time she talks to him, it feels like she is getting dragged into something strange. Meanwhile, while standing there, he secretly casts a spell while touching his stomach. Soon, he opens his shirt and reveals blood, claiming the wound has opened again. She rushes toward him in concern and notices the bleeding, remembering that it has already been 5 months and it still has not healed. He explains it is a magical wound, so it takes longer to recover, and when she touches it, he suddenly shouts. She quickly apologizes and asks if it hurt, but he says it does not really hurt. However, inside his mind, a very different plan unfolds. Eiyan thinks the Grand Duchess is exhausted, and that her pity for him leaves a gap in her heart, which makes this the perfect time. He remembers a warning from his master who once told him not to use mind magic, explaining that mind magic is forbidden because it directly affects a person's consciousness and could cause serious damage, especially to someone so young. The master warned him that forbidden magic exists for a reason, yet back in the present, he quietly rejects that warning and thinks that this is what he has always done. At that moment, he casts the spell on Kanemiya and tries to pry into her secrets. However, something strange happens. She suddenly asks what he just did, which shocks him because the magic should have worked. He quickly pretends nothing happened and claims she just seemed out of it. She simply says training is over for today and that she should prepare to meet the priest. Meanwhile, confusion grows in his mind because the magic failed. Floating magic and teleportation worked before, so he wonders if she has some ability that cancels his magic, even though she has no mana at all. This makes him even more curious about who she really is. In fact, he finds her more interesting than ever and praises her dedication, saying she always gives her best even when no one is watching. She simply replies that she promised her mother she would never skip training. At this point, I can't help thinking, this girl clearly has something special if even forbidden magic cannot touch her. We remain with Kanemiya and Eiyan after training, and the conversation slowly turns personal. She almost asks about his parents, but quickly stops herself, thinking it would be rude to ask about family matters out of curiosity. She tries to brush it off, yet he answers anyway, explaining that he has no parents. He recalls that, when he was about 7 years old, his father suddenly gave him a blindfold one ordinary day and told him to wear it because a surprise gift was waiting. They walked for a long time, and although he kept asking where they were going and what the surprise was, his father never replied. The ground beneath his feet felt damp, and walking blindfolded was frightening. However, even in that moment, the only thing on his mind was how long it had been since he last held his father's hand, so he simply kept walking beside him. Eventually, they stopped, and his father told him to wait there with the blindfold still on and to count to 100 while he went to get the gift. His father even said he was smart enough to wait. That was when he realized the surprise was probably a lie and that he might be getting left behind forever. Even so, he stayed there and waited, and when night came, he kept counting to 100 again and again. Returning to the present, he says the whole thing sounds stupid. Kanemiya quietly looks at him, gently touches his face, and says it is not stupid at all. At that moment, I find myself thinking, any kid would have done the same thing because the scene reveals how lonely his childhood truly was. In the next scene, we see Kanemiya sitting calmly while drinking tea and speaking with Priest Andrea. She learns that he plans to step down from the priesthood because his age has weakened his divine power. She asks when the next priest will arrive in the Grand Duchy, but he explains that the temple may withdraw entirely. She reacts with shock, questioning why this would happen when people still visit the temple and the duchy continues to make large yearly contributions. Although he claims not to know the details, she quickly guesses the reason must be Duke Roslin. Her thoughts explain the situation clearly. Duke Roslin is the temple's biggest donor and someone who holds deep hatred toward her family. His daughter, Fairy Daniel, once broke her engagement because she fell in love with Chloe's father, and the Duke also lost a huge investment in her father's business that was never returned. Because of this, she believes he cannot stand her family. She then worries about what will happen to the medical care for the people if the temple closes. The priest laughs gently and says, "The Lord will provide," yet she calls out to him in frustration and begins thinking that she must find another solution. Finally, the story shifts to another place where we see a blue-haired woman named Shen Tian lying down, coughing again and again. Weak and quiet, she says that when the last leaf on the tree falls, she will die. Shen Tian lies coughing and covering her mouth, yet she suddenly asks for one last thing, alcohol, saying she feels a strong craving and begging for just a sip. Lo immediately tells her to wake up from that dream and reminds her she's healthy enough to walk for another 100 years. She complains, calling him cruel, begging again, and angrily criticizes the people of the Leonine continent as uncultured fools, asking if he has no compassion. He calmly asks why she keeps demanding alcohol when everything he brings tastes terrible to her, and she insists the drinks are awful, determined to keep searching for one that suits her taste. Lo points out she spent the whole day, and maybe the so-called divine liquor never existed, questioning why she's so obsessed when other delicious things exist. She firmly explains that some flavors are tied to memories, and I have to admit, yeah, memories really can turn a simple taste into something special. Then we shift to her memory with her master. Years ago, he offered her a drink crafted from ingredients imported from the Leonine continent. She complained that he was drinking in broad daylight and saw no appeal in it, but he insisted that alchemists must stay open-minded and explore everything. He told her it was called divinely core and explained the difficulty of making it. She tried it, expecting the famed drink, but spat it out, claiming it was poison. The master scolded her for wasting it. She argued the Leonine continent has many sweet ingredients, and he said this is why he still calls her a child. Later, he gave up and promised she could gorge on sweets in the Leonine continent if she kept working hard. While packing for the trip, she reminded him she wouldn't pack his bags this time, and he grumbled playfully. Then he called her again to apologize for delaying the trip due to a summons from the Imperial Palace, and she guessed correctly that it was for some weapon project, but he reassured her she was too young to worry. At the palace, the king questions the master, offering an antidote and respect if he obeys, but the master refuses, saying alchemy is not for killing and that even enemy soldiers are human. The king laughs and exiles him and all connected to him, warning that anyone who helps will die, and even surviving elsewhere, he would be hunted. Soon after, Shintian reunites with him, holding him as he lies, weak on the ground. She says they are almost at the border and promises to find an antidote in the Leonine continent, begging him to hold on. He asks if she remembers the divine liquor he once let her taste. She recalls it and pleads for him to stop talking since he is still bleeding. But he continues, saying he had hoped to drink it again in the Leonine continent. Gently placing a hand on her face, he tells her she has the taste buds of a child and should buy all the sweets she wants, apologizing for not being able to stay with her. This moment is really heartbreaking. Back in the present, Shintian stares out the window. Lo suggests stopping the search for the liquor and hands her a package to open. She catches it, surprised at how expensive it looks. He explains that it came from the innkeeper, delivered by someone who resembled a high-ranking messenger. She's shocked it's for her, and Lo reminds her she's an illegal resident and jokes she might have caused trouble while drunk again. She calls him an insolent brat and warns him not to underestimate her, but he says he only worries about her being expelled if they act recklessly. Ignoring him, she opens the container and finds a bottle and a letter. Lifting the bottle, she wonders what it is, even thinking it could be poison. Then her eyes widen as a shocking thought hits her. She picks up the letter, hands shaking as she reads it. Lo asks what's wrong, and she simply says to pack his things because they have someone to meet. We enter a strange dream where Shan Tian stands before his master. The master calls him closer, hands him a drink, and asks him to hold it for a moment, explaining that it is precious to those weeds because it was brewed personally with ingredients from the Leonine continent. Hearing that, Shintian is surprised and asks how the master even managed to arrive there since the path is rough and the journey must have been difficult. However, while speaking, he suddenly pauses and realizes this is only a dream. Even so, the master keeps looking at him, and Shintian speaks with sadness, admitting that this unworthy disciple grows more tired in both mind and body as each day passes. Furthermore, he explains that nothing in the Leonine continent reminds him of the master because the poems were burned to ashes by Xingka Khan. In addition, no one in this land understands alchemy or the true value of the master's achievements. As a result, it feels like he is the only one who still remembers, yet even he can no longer clearly recall the master's face. Therefore, it feels as if the master never existed at all. He admits that fleeting memories are not enough because they vanish like the wind, and what he really needs is real proof to remember him by, just like the liquid he once tasted long ago. Just when it seems the dream will continue, Shan Tian suddenly wakes up and wonders where he is. At that moment, Kanemia calls his name and asks if he is feeling alright. However, the story shifts a few hours earlier as Kanemia remembers several troubling matters. She thinks about the Jade Star migration for George and the lack of news today. Moreover, she recalls how an abrupt order from the other forced the temple to shut down. In addition, she remembers when her people said the funds were ready and that the Grand Duchess could even use the treasury, yet Louis refused, explaining that doing so would only fatten the others. After dismissing the vassals who suggested making a donation deal with Duke Roslin, Louis began considering another plan. Consequently, the new idea was alchemy from the Eastern continent. We learn that alchemy is a mystical art discovered in the East, and in lands without followers of the other, it replaces divine power for healing. Unlike divine power, which takes a long time to heal one person, alchemy allows many people to be treated quickly through potions. As a result, by the latter part of the original story, alchemy becomes more popular than divine power. Therefore, this is the perfect opportunity to recruit alchemists and take control of a blue ocean market in the Leonine continent. Fortunately, Alchemists already exist secretly across the Leonin continent, although they are exiles who criticized the tyrant Shinkakan and now live as illegal immigrants. Because of that, gathering them openly is difficult, yet if a certain person is involved, it may still be possible. Soon, Vanessa approaches Kinemia and says, "The guests have arrived." She becomes excited and asks if it is really true, thinking about the leader of the alchemists, an unmatched genius. However, Vanessa hesitates and asks if these are truly the people she expected. When Kinemia finally sees them, she is shocked. Shentian immediately says this old body will not last much longer and asks for liquor. Hearing that makes Kinemia feel the situation is a little terrifying, so she quietly asks Vanessa to bring alcohol and she leaves to get it. Honestly, I cannot help thinking, this introduction is already chaotic. Back in the present, Shentian stands with his arms folded while Kinemia observes him, thinking it strange that he was making such a fuss about dying earlier, yet now looks perfectly fine. Moreover, she recalls hearing that he built an absurdly strong body by eating all sorts of strange things while searching for alcohol, which makes him look ridiculously young. She also realizes Shentian is actually Mochura, and while noticing the person who came with him is still sitting nearby, she decides to avoid eye contact because she has no idea who that person is. Instead, she focuses on her goal and politely thanks him for traveling so far, introducing herself as Kinemia Leon, the Grand Duchess of Leon. Shentian simply reacts with a quiet sound while thinking that this small girl must be the one who sent the box earlier. Moreover, he admits she at least understands proper manners, unlike the fools of the Leonine continent. In addition, he notices that although she looks tiny, she carries the face of a beauty that could ruin nations. Finally, he asks why the young Grand Duchess sought him. Kinemia immediately brings up his fame as the greatest alchemist of the Eastern continent. Hearing this, Shentian laughs proudly and says, "Even in the Leonine continent, his reputation arrives first. Like a needle hidden in a pouch that always pokes through." She praises him further and says that across all continents he stands like a queen among chickens, which makes him realize she understands quite a bit of the Eastern language. Meanwhile, Lo sits quietly nearby, listening to strange phrases like needle in a pouch and queen among chickens, clearly confused by them. Kinemia then explains that although she still has much to learn, the proverbs of the Eastern continent carry deep wisdom, and as head of her family, she studies them carefully. Finally, she reveals the plan. The Leon family will use all the temple grounds to build a full alchemy district. Shentian quickly understands this will require many alchemists and realizes she wants him as the leader to gather them. She calmly confirms it and promises strong rewards, including legal status, housing, and fair pay for every alchemist who settles in the Grand Duchy. Hearing this, he realizes she is not simply hiring him but planning to build an entire alchemy district, which is shocking in a place where alchemy is treated as taboo. Furthermore, the Grand Duchy's offer of protection means they must be strong enough to withstand backlash, so the offer feels unbelievably generous. Still, she has not said what she wants in return, so he decides to accept first and investigate later since the rewards are too good to ignore. Yet just before he can respond, Lo suddenly jumps up and accepts the offer loudly. Kinemia reacts with surprise, repeats the strange word, fairy, after hearing it and confirms it again. However, she suddenly remembers something about him. Despite his huge size, he is obsessed with cute creatures, and honestly, that detail makes the moment surprisingly funny. Shentian becomes angry and scolds Lo for making his own decision, but Lo argues that the offer is amazing and says his master needs a new goal in life, so he stops living in the past. This only annoys Shentian more as he complains about the constant overstepping. Seeing the argument growing worse, Kinemia quickly tells them to stop fighting because she has not even revealed the best part. She places a letter on the table and asks Shentian if he is curious about the recipe for the liqueur she gave him earlier. Then she calmly reveals she is willing to give him the recipe for the divine liqueur itself. Hearing that shocking offer, Shentian is stunned, and finally Kinemia confirms the recipe will be his if he agrees to a lifetime contract with House Leon. Shentian stands before Kinemia, his arms folded, and calmly brings up the lifetime contract, saying there is something he must confirm before deciding. First, he asks how the Grand Duchess even knew he had been searching for the divine liqueur. Moreover, he questions how she plans to prove that the recipe she mentioned is truly real. Kinemia answers that she learned about his search while asking people about his whereabouts. Furthermore, rumors had been spreading that an alcoholic from the Eastern continent had been visiting taverns everywhere while demanding the divine liqueur. Hearing this, Shentian quietly covers his mouth and reflects that gossip exists everywhere. Then Kanemia speaks honestly and admits that she herself does not actually know if the recipe is real. Instead, only Duke Shentian himself can verify it. This confuses him, so he asks what she means. As a result, Kanemia begins explaining something from the past. She talks about her grandfather who traveled far and wide in his youth to expand his knowledge. He visited nearby lands and distant countries with very different climates and cultures, and he carefully recorded every experience in journals. Kanemia says she grew up reading those journals like storybooks. Then she reveals that when she heard Duke Shentian was searching for the divine liqueur, one story from those journals suddenly came to mind. According to the journal, her grandfather once met a man from the eastern continent who called himself an alchemist. That man was searching for rare ingredients to create the divine liqueur because he wanted to show his disciple, who did not understand alcohol, the ultimate flavor. After many hardships, he gathered all the ingredients and left happily for his homeland, saying his disciple was waiting. Hearing this story, Shentian's eyes widen as he immediately thinks about his master. Lowering his gaze, Shentian reflects that he believed he would never find any trace of his master again. Therefore, he asks if the recipe was also written in the journal. Kanemia calmly confirms that it was and explains that the liqueur she sent him was made according to that exact recipe. His eyes widen again, and she gently asks how it tasted and whether it was, in fact, the drink he had been searching for. Hearing that question, memories return to him. He recalls the first sip burning his mouth, the thick feeling in his throat, the strong wave of aroma, and finally the deep aftertaste that feels like a forest yet also like honey. As these memories return, he also remembers his master. Soon after, Shentian admits the taste was unmistakable and so strong it remains carved into his memory, meaning it truly was the exact flavor. However, he reflects that unless the Imperial Council collapses, returning to his homeland will remain impossible, and going back to a place where his master no longer exists feels meaningless. Yet he suddenly thinks that someone here wants to use his master's knowledge to save lives, and leaving traces of that knowledge in this land with his own hands might not be a bad thing. Honestly, hearing that thought makes the moment feel powerful because it shows how much he still respects his master. As a result, Shentian finally agrees and asks where to place his seal. Kanemia instantly becomes excited and asks if that means what she thinks it means, quickly thanking Duke Shentian and promising he will not regret the choice. Shentian calmly says he trusts her, and just like that, the agreement is made. Soon after, Lo walks up to Kanemia and happily extends his hands saying, "This is wonderful," and asking her to take good care of their master. However, something strange happens immediately because Lo suddenly turns into a cat. Just when things cannot get any stranger, a voice calls from behind. It is Eiyan, asking Kanemia if she is all right. She turns back and calls his name. He then asks if she is hot anyway. Kanemia becomes confused and asks if what just happened was his doing. He calmly admits it was, explaining that a suspicious man was about to touch her and that he is her bodyguard. Kanemia quickly tells him that Lo was not suspicious and asks why he sent Lo to the forbidden Mabu forest on the Eiyan continent. As a result, she immediately orders him to bring him back. Without hesitation, Eiyan snaps his fingers and says he will do it if she insists. In the next moment, he snaps again and Lo suddenly returns. Kanemia checks on him right away and asks if he is alright and what happened during that short time. Lo calmly says nothing happened. Kanemia looks at him and replies that it definitely does not look like nothing happened. She then turns to Eiyan and firmly explains that Mr. Lo is not suspicious and tells him never to do something like that again. He simply agrees. Yet inside his mind, Eiyan notices that Lo's eyes look completely out of it. Meanwhile, he watches Kanemia guide Shentian to place his seal on the contract while thinking that Lo might be an even bigger lunatic than Kakan and that the end might be near. Honestly, if someone suddenly turned into a cat right in front of me, I would probably be shocked too. After that moment, the story moves outside a door. Shentian tells Kanemia he needs to lie down and rest for a while. She politely tells him to rest well and says she will be counting on him from now on. As a result, Kanemia feels satisfied because Shentian has now been officially recruited. Later in her office, she reflects on how everything happened. She remembers wondering how she could recruit him, yet her grandfather's journal suddenly caught her eye at the perfect moment. Because of that, her luck feels almost unbelievable. She recalls the moment she read the journal and discovered the story about Shentian and his master inside it. This makes her wonder why she suddenly felt like reading a journal she had not touched in so long, and she begins to think it almost feels as if someone deliberately guided her. On another day, the scene shifts to the Grand Duchy, where many people from the eastern continent are arriving. A passerby asks why so many people from the east are entering the Grand Duchy. Another man answers that they are alchemists. Someone repeats the word alchemists in surprise, and others say they heard the Grand Duchess turn the temple grounds into an alchemy district called Eiyan. Soon after, Kinemiya and Shintian stand at the entrance of this new district as she announces the start of the potion demonstration. Shintian calls for the representative of the injured person to step forward, and the man responds loudly, wondering whether an alchemy potion is really safe. Shintian calmly lifts a bottle and explains that it is a medical decoction brewed personally, known in the Leonine continent as a potion, and that it only needs to be poured onto the wound. The moment it touches the injury, the man shouts. Yet the wound begins to heal. Shocked, he says the pain is gone. Shintian casually tells him to stop exaggerating. Meanwhile, the watching crowd is amazed at how quickly the wound heals. Some ask the name of the medicine, and Shintian answers that it is called Palpu. The crowd immediately praises the name and calls it fantastic. While the excitement continues, Kinemiya quietly leaves the scene and walks over to Eiyan. She calls his name and tells him to come with her. His eyes widen as he asks where they are going, and she calmly says there is nowhere else to go because he needs to treat his wound. Hearing that suddenly shocks Eiyan. As Kinemiya arrives at the alchemy district, several girls rush toward her, greeting the little fairy lady with excitement and asking why she came all the way here. One even offers some medicinal candy, but she politely declines, explaining that she came to treat her guard Eiyan's magical injury. They happily agree and guide them inside. Eiyan sits before an alchemist, who first asks to examine the wound. When he opens his shirt, the alchemist is shocked, but suddenly Eiyan speaks directly into his mind, warning him not to show surprise, telling him to blink if he understands, and threatening to kill him for any mistake. His eyes turn purple as he orders the alchemist to tell Kinemiya the wound cannot be healed, leaving the man confused. Then he remembers Shintian warned him about a madman following the fairy and realizes this must be that person because Eiyan has repeatedly mutilated his own side. Still, pride as an alchemist conflicts with giving up the chance to impress the fairy lady. Inside Eiyan's mind, he impatiently demands attention, and finally, the alchemist decides not to sacrifice his pride. Eiyan calmly introduces himself as Eiyan Kreutz and says he is about to end his life, which makes the moment tense. The alchemist then tells Kinemiya that the injury cannot be healed because of a powerful curse, choosing his own life and peaceful future over pride. Kinemiya accepts it calmly, and he apologizes. Eiyan smiles, gives a thumbs up, and thinks it is right not to treat the wound yet. He also reflects on Chloe, noticing she has no magic, is skilled with a sword, is weak in the morning, likes soft animals, keeps distance from him, yet smiles naturally with others, and he feels strangely irritated. Just then, a voice calls Fair Lady, and both turn to see Lo. Soon after, Lo runs toward Chloe, who happily calls his name. He explains he came because he heard about an adorable present and found the fairy lady. Eiyan watches, thinking this is the same fellow again, and casts magic at him. But Lo dodges instantly, shocking Eiyan. Kinemiya asks about the kitty, and he says it is sleeping. Eiyan keeps thinking about how fast that move was, questioning who Lo really is. Lo then gives Kinemiya a handmade gift which she finds soft and warm, and she happily says it is the first handmade gift she has ever received. Lo is shocked, thinking she receives 35 gifts every day. Kinemiya laughs. Eiyan feels jealous and thinks he is an idiot. Then Lo lifts her, declaring he will knit one outfit for her every day, and she says it is unnecessary. Someone calls her my lady, so she leaves, leaving only Eiyan and Lo. Eiyan throws many spells, but Lo dodges them all. Shintian watches from afar, sighing at how crazy they are, even crazier than Kakan. An old man approaches Shintian, expressing gratitude to him and his master for creating Eiyan. He shares how he was respected in his homeland but treated as useless in the Leonine continent, waiting for death until he saw the notice, prepared herbs, and healed people, realizing he could still help others. He thanks Shintian and the master for the opportunity. As he leaves, Shintian reflects that he is not the only one who remembers his master and smiles, thinking today the drink tastes especially good, almost as if his master is sitting beside him. I would have felt the same warmth. Now the story shifts into a flashback, where Ryan, overwhelmed and defeated, admits that he might as well be killed. However, Eiyan calmly refuses, explaining that killing him would be far too easy. Instead, he mocks Ryan's foolishness, questioning whether he truly believed he could defeat him. As Eiyan moves closer, Ryan panics and desperately begs him to stop, but Eiyan makes it clear that he intends to punish him so that he can finally reflect on his arrogance. Before Ryan can even understand what is about to happen, he is suddenly struck with intense pain in his eye, causing him to scream in agony. Eiyan, unfazed, confirms that it is indeed his eye and coldly tells him that from now on, every time he sees that empty space, he should remember this moment. He adds that this is nothing more than payback for what Ryan did to him, making it clear there is no mercy in his actions. The scene then cuts back to the present as Ryan wakes up abruptly from the nightmare, consumed by anger. He calls out Eiyan Kreutz's name with hatred and swears revenge, vowing to destroy everything Eiyan holds dear, to tear it apart, grind it into dust, and burn it to ashes until Eiyan is left with nothing but regret. After that, the focus shifts to Kinemia, who now feels much better as she sits near a blue gem. Vanessa, however, expresses concern about Kinemia's sensitivity to the cold, warning that they might run out of magic stones again when winter comes. Kinemia remains calm and reassures her that they can simply buy more, especially since their slime potions and tonics have become highly successful. Although Vanessa agrees, she points out that the price of magic stones has risen significantly. This makes Kinemia curious as she notes that new dungeons are still appearing, so there should not be a shortage. Vanessa explains that goods are becoming harder to find and that they need to be cautious, though she suddenly stops herself from saying more. Kinemia quickly notices this hesitation and presses her for the truth, but Vanessa dismisses it, claiming that it's all. Sensing that something is off, Kinemia concludes that Count Harv is likely overcharging them. She recalls his influence in the magic stone trade and his uncle's punishment during the time of James West. Reflecting on this, she finds it unreasonable that he still holds a grudge, considering his uncle was executed for tax crimes. With this in mind, Kinemia decides that instead of relying on others, they might as well mine the magic stones themselves, a bold idea that could change everything. In the next scene, Kinemia arrives at the Dungeon Administration Bureau and begins selecting dungeon cards one after another, eventually asking for everything on the page. The man assisting her is visibly confused and questions whether she is serious, especially since one of the dungeons she chose has no monsters and therefore cannot produce magic stones. Despite this, Kinemia insists that it is fine, and the man proceeds with the purchase. Privately, Kinemia realizes that while such a dungeon may lack magic stones, it holds something even more valuable, mithril. Since no one else has discovered this yet, she sees it as a rare opportunity, almost like insider trading. Once the transaction is complete, the man reminds her that she must now send a team to clear the dungeon and asks if she has already hired a guild. At that moment, Kinemia realizes she has overlooked something important. She begins to worry, recognizing that she got carried away with purchasing dungeons and forgot to secure a guild. The situation becomes more complicated, as it is revealed that there is currently a shortage of battle guilds. This problem began years ago when the leader of the Black Knight Guild suddenly retired, causing all its members to stop fighting as well due to their strong loyalty to him. As a result, the entire industry suffered, leaving very few reliable guilds available. In the absence of trustworthy groups, many fraudulent guilds have appeared, deceiving clients, stealing magic tools, and disappearing without a trace. Now, only a handful of dependable guilds remain, and Kinemia has no connections to reach them, putting her in a difficult position. While she is deep in thought, someone suddenly calls out to her, teasing her for sighing so heavily. Kinemia turns and recognizes Shentian, greeting him and questioning whether he has been drinking again. Shentian casually dismisses it, claiming that alcohol is like medicine. When Kinemia mentions that Loe will be worried, Shentian brushes it off, saying Loe can worry all he wants, and even complains that dealing with him is enough to turn his hair white. Their attention is then drawn to Lo, who is causing trouble once again. Shentian sighs in frustration, remarking that Lo never changes and joking about how he might burn the house down one day. Then, becoming more serious, Shentian asks Kinemia for a favor, requesting that she take Lo away and put him to use somewhere else. Kinemia is surprised by this and reminds him that Lo is supposed to be learning alchemy from him. However, Shentian reveals that he never agreed to teach Lo and that the boy forced himself into becoming his apprentice. As Kinemia reacts in shock, Shentian continues, explaining that alchemy does not suit Lo at all and that he would be better off using his strength elsewhere. He then drops a surprising revelation. Lo is actually a Kashan. Kinemia immediately questions whether he means a Kashan from the Black Knights Guild, and Shentian confirms it, casually adding that Lo once led that group himself. This realization stuns Kinemia as she finally understands that Lo was the former leader of the Black Knights, a revelation that completely changes how she sees him. The scene shifts to another moment where news spreads that the waste prohibition has been lifted. As this is mentioned, Eiyan responds while his master speaks to him, scolding him for his insolence and warning him to listen carefully. The master reminds him that Ryan is both ambitious and unpredictable, emphasizing that he must remain alert at all times because the moment he lowers his guard, another incident will occur. In response, Eiyan calmly states that if Ryan is prepared to die, then he is no match for him, something even his master already understands. However, the master silently admits that it is precisely this kind of confidence that unsettles him. Changing the topic, the master asks about Eiyan's second awakening. Eiyan casually mentions that his joints have been feeling stiff lately, prompting the master to realize that it is about to begin and to warn him that hardship lies ahead. Suddenly, the master notices what Eiyan is doing and questions him, wondering if it might be some kind of cursed magic tool. Instead, Eiyan simply says he is knitting, leaving the master in disbelief. He even remarks on how surprising it is to see that Eiyan is actually bad at something, not just twisting threads but knitting itself, though Eiyan quickly tells him to be quiet. The master then comments on how unusual the silence feels, and Eiyan brushes it off by saying he was just bored. Despite this, his thoughts drift back to a memory of Kinemia mentioning that it was her first time receiving a handmade gift and thanking Lo. That memory continues to linger in his mind, frustrating him as he cannot understand why it keeps replaying. Honestly, I would be annoyed too if that kept replaying in my head. As the story unfolds, we are introduced to Kashan, the heir to the desert, a man known for his immense strength and keen combat instincts. After the oasis of his homeland dried up, he left and came to the Empire where he joined the Black Knights. Under his leadership, the guild rose rapidly, completing every mission and gaining widespread recognition, and many believed their success would never fade. However, everything changed when the leader suddenly laid down his sword, causing the guild itself to disappear soon after. In the present, that same man now stands as Lo. Back in the current timeline, Lo shows Kinemia something he made, explaining that he fixed a list of food. Kinemia thanks him and quietly recognizes how exceptional his skill is, while also reflecting on the fact that someone once known as the strongest swordsman chose to abandon his blade. Later, she asks Shentian why Lo left the Black Knights, and Shentian explains that the sword he cherished like a soulmate was broken. Kinemia repeats this in surprise, and Shentian elaborates that it was the legendary Blade of the Desert, a weapon believed to hold the soul of its wielder. According to him, Lo believed he lost his soul the moment it was destroyed, and chose to abandon the sword entirely. Shentian dismisses this reasoning as absurd, arguing that swords exist everywhere and a true craftsman should not blame his tools. Even so, despite claiming he has let it go, Lo cannot help but watch the Grand Duke's knights whenever they train, staring with the excitement of a child while still insisting he has lost his sword, a contradiction that makes his character even more compelling. In the present, Kinemia sits with Lo and asks if he has ever considered picking up a sword again. He immediately questions whether Shentian put her up to it, and she admits he did, then explains that although people say he gave up the sword after losing Tuyen, she believes that deep down, he still wants to wield it again. She even offers to make a sword for him if the issue is that he cannot find one that satisfies him. However, Lo firmly refuses, explaining that Tuyen was the greatest sword on the continent, a blade carried by Kashan leaders through countless battles, holding their history, their soul, and the memories of their comrades. Therefore, no sword could ever surpass it. Despite this, Kinemia insists that she can create one just as great, though he calls it impossible. Refusing to back down, she challenges him to test it unless he is afraid, but he declares that no matter what sword she presents, he will never wield one again. The tension rises as Kinemia calls him stubborn and escalates the situation by challenging him to a duel of the sword, a desert tradition that cannot be refused once declared, unless withdrawn. She sets the rules clearly as 3 strikes without the use of aura. Although Lo calls the challenge absurd and claims she cannot defeat him, Kinemia calmly responds that the outcome cannot be decided until they actually fight. That confidence alone already makes this feel like a real battle. In another moment, Kinemia approaches the Behemoth twins. Ser immediately panics, insisting that she cannot create anything greater than Tuyen, and that even attempting to do so feels wrong, while Lana adds that the sword broke before she could even examine it properly. Kinemia stops them and tells them to calm down before presenting something to them. First the magic stones and then the mithril. This instantly captures their attention. As Sayer examines it, she admits she has never seen a mineral like it before, and Kinemia explains that it is mithril obtained from a dungeon. She asks them to use it to forge a sword not under pressure, but simply as an experiment. The sisters exchange glances, clearly excited by the idea of working with a new material, and they agree to try. Kinemia thanks them, but just as the conversation seems to settle, she notices something else and asks about it. Lana explains that it is a bracelet prepared for the upcoming Festival of Bonds, meant as a special gift for those who purchase slimes. She then offers to make some for Kinemia as well and asks if there is someone she would like to give one to. Hearing this, Kinemia pauses, visibly struck by the thought, and after a brief moment she asks if she can choose the color. A small but warm shift in tone after everything that has happened. Now, in the present moment, we see Kinemia holding the bracelet in her hands, and as she thinks deeply, she realizes that when she heard the word, friend, the first person that came to her mind was Eiyan, and she quietly admits to herself that she really likes it, yet at the same time she worries that he might just throw it out of the window again. Moreover, as if guided by fate, she suddenly spots him and immediately thinks that her target has been detected. Yet instead of walking up boldly like usual, she hesitates, feeling embarrassed because she always teases him and now wants to give him a gift. As a result, she hides behind the door, wondering how she is even supposed to give it to him. But just when she is still thinking, his voice suddenly comes from behind, greeting her, which startles her so much that she drops the box. She quickly complains, asking where he even came from, and he calmly explains that he felt her nearby and used a dimensional jump. Then he picks up the bracelet and asks what it is, while she struggles to respond, thinking that she did not want to give it to him yet. However, she tries to explain by saying she heard it is relationship day, and he questions if that is the day friends give each other bracelets, while also thinking to himself, and even asking if that so-called unevolved primate, meaning low, gave it to her. She quickly denies it, saying no one gave it to her because it is for him. At that moment his eyes widen in shock, and as she repeats that she made it to give to him, he asks if it is really for him, and she explains that when she heard friends give gifts, she thought of him. Looking down, she begins to blush and wonders why he is not saying anything, then nervously adds that it might look like a kid's toy and asks him not to throw it away if he does not like it, but before she can finish, he cuts her off and says, "It is pretty," calling the bracelet beautiful as he steps closer and says he wants it, and honestly, that sudden switch in his tone would catch anyone off guard. Kinemia's eyes widen, and she happily says she is glad he likes it, while he asks her to put it on his hand. She agrees and does so for him. After that, he calmly says this is the first time he's ever had a friend, and he asks her about Mia, while she softly admits it is the same for her. Meanwhile, in the background, two maids secretly watch the scene unfold, and one becomes emotional, saying their young lady has finally made a friend, while the other responds that they have all been waiting for this day, clearly moved by the moment. Another maid then calls Vanessa to come and see, saying she must witness this beautiful scene, but she can barely hold herself together and says she cannot stop crying. However, just when things seem calm, Vanessa suddenly notices something strange outside, a butterfly, even though winter is coming, leaving her quietly wondering what that could mean. In the next scene, Kinemia quietly thinks to herself, wondering if this is all somehow connected to the sword, and notices that even Lo has come in his formal attire, which makes her pause for a moment. Eiyan stands beside her, going in and out of view, and when she responds to him, he quickly offers to handle that troublesome primate if she wants, but she calmly tells him to stay relaxed and asks if he is feeling well today, noting that he hasn't been in the best condition lately. He reassures her that he is fine because her care makes him feel better, and ever since putting on the fancy bracelets, he's been feeling even stronger. She smiles at that and feels glad. Then he presses her about her real plan, but she keeps it secret for now and simply tells him to watch. With that, she steps forward to face Lo, presenting the sword Behemoth is currently producing and asking his opinion. He says it is decent but not better than 2 yen, and she listens, then draws another sword, declaring that this one will surpass 2 yen. As she holds it out, Lo's eyes widen in surprise, realizing this must be the new sword she promised, and she confirms that the Behemoths crafted it, describing the blade's unique blue tone, sharp energy, precise forging, and compact structure. He mentally acknowledges its beauty but warns her that a good sword does not guarantee victory, noting the huge difference in their strength and body size, while she confidently challenges him, determined to prove that the sword can overcome that gap. Lo internally prepares, thinking she is serious and planning to finish their duel in 3 exchanges without using aura, intending to enjoy the second strike and carefully deflect the third so she won't be hurt. Yet, the moment she suddenly attacks, he is shocked, questioning what is happening, and slows his resistance. As they continue exchanging strikes, he becomes more surprised with each movement, eyes widening as he realizes just how capable she is. Lo stares at the sword in his hand and is shocked to see the hilt broken. His mind races as he processes that the sword has been caught and something remarkable has happened. Kinemia approaches and asks how he is and where the new sword is. He responds with disbelief, asking what exactly this sword is. Kinemia explains that it was made from a newly discovered mineral called mithril, and Lo, realizing its power, admits his complete defeat and the failure of his own prejudice, apologizing for underestimating it. Kinemia tells him to take the sword and join the effort to gather the scattered Black Knights, helping him become one of the Waste Knights. Lo hesitates, feeling unworthy due to his stubbornness and the absence of his scattered comrades, unsure how to face them. Yet Kinemia reassures him by comparing his look at the sword to the grief his brother showed when seeing the orphanage and reminds him that missing an old friend doesn't mean he cannot cherish a new one. Understanding this, he swears his loyalty to glory rests upon the oasis, which surprises Kinemia, who explains that a swordman's vow is a lifelong dedication to a lord. Feeling rejected, Lo tries to stab himself with the broken sword, but after considering Tuyen's loyalty and courage, he wants to give his all to Kinemia instead. She immediately accepts his vow, calms down, and hands the sword to him, calling him by name. He bows, collects it, and pledges to raise the Black Knights starting tomorrow. Kinemia, thinking to herself, reflects on securing the strongest combat guild and anticipates growing rich with magic stones. In the next scene, Kinemia turns to Eiyan surprised at how quiet he is and asks if he watched her plan for food properly. Her eyes widen when she sees him lying flat on the floor and she calls his name, rushing over. Later in the room he lies on the bed while she watches closely. Shentian enters and asks what happened. Kinemia explains that when she found him he had already collapsed and points out the wound on his side that hasn't healed. Shentian prepares to check it, saying they'll need a potion, but Kinemia lifts his shirt and sees the wound completely healed, realizing it should have been slow to mend because of the curse and that potions hadn't been helping. Shentian remarks that he must have reopened the wound himself many times and wonders why he didn't speak to her before. Kinemia recalls how she told him to wait until he was fully healed, and Shentian adds that it doesn't seem like he collapsed because of the wound, but he's looked unwell lately. Kinemia confirms he mentioned headaches and stiff joints. Shentian explains it's a second awakening, where a mage's magic grows too fast for the body to handle, causing pain, and reassures her that he'll regain consciousness soon. She goes to prepare medicine, while Kinemia reflects on how he kept reopening the wound because he feared abandonment. Kinemia speaks to him gently while he's still lying down, calling him a fool, and hears him respond softly while counting with eyes closed. Memories flood her mind of him saying he kept counting to 100 over and over even when night fell and the sun rose again, just in case no one came back. She listens as he continues counting and holds his hand, telling him it's okay and that she will never abandon him. Then she lies beside him, comforting him, feeling the weight of his trust and her responsibility. That's definitely the cutest thing I've seen today. In the next moment, we watch Eiyan continue counting down. 15, 9, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then his eyes slowly open as he thinks to himself that it is that dream again, wondering why it keeps coming back even though he knows no one is there in the end. However, as if that thought is proven wrong, he turns and notices Kinemia lying beside him and he softly calls her name while touching her hair, confused if this is also a dream. She wakes up at once, sits up and quickly checks on him, asking how he feels and if he is okay. He calmly replies that he is fine while asking if she was worried. Immediately, she hugs him, and his eyes widen as she tells him how much he scared her when he collapsed and asks why he said nothing about the pain of the second awakening. He apologizes and brushes it off as something small, yet notices she stayed up all night and wonders if she feels guilty. She firmly tells him that she simply cares, and that he should always speak when he is in pain because she will take care of him no matter what. That moment hits deeply as his eyes widen again, and just when she tries to leave to call a doctor and prepare food, he holds her hand and asks her to stay a little longer, and she agrees, which honestly feels like a quiet but powerful shift in their bond. I would have stayed too, no question, because the moment carries so much weight. Meanwhile, in another scene, the maids talk among themselves, noting that he is finally starting to act more like a proper human being. Soon after, Kinemia meets Noah and introduces herself properly as Kinemia West, showing respect to the former ruler of the Magic Tower. He greets her warmly, and she quickly realizes who he truly is, the king of mages who stands equal to, or even above the emperor, even though he looks young despite being of her grandfather's age. She remains composed and speaks about Eiyan's condition, but he reassures her that no mage has ever died from a second awakening and invites her to sit. However, he suddenly asks her to sit beside him instead, and as she politely offers tea, he interrupts and asks her to call him grandfather, which surprises her at first, but she agrees, and he reacts with visible joy, even tearing up. As she thanks him, he reflects on how he has watched her from afar and now sees her as a strong and admirable child, even noting how she has helped Eiyan become more human. Then he asks her to stay for a few days to watch over him, and she immediately agrees to prepare everything for his comfort, showing her usual calm and care. In the next scene, we are taken to Ryan, and we see him slam his hands hard against the wall as he shouts in frustration, unable to hold back his anger. At the same time, we get a look into his thoughts as he tries to make sense of what is happening, wondering why magic does not work on her and how something like that is even possible. He quickly connects it back to Eiyan Kreutz, thinking that he must have prepared something in advance, and as a result, he comes to a new conclusion that at the very least this proves the Grand Duchess is important to him, which he sees as a good thing for his plans. However, even though he admits the situation is troublesome, he decides he has no choice but to use another method, and just when we think things could not get more tense, a butterfly suddenly appears in his hand. Without hesitation, he gives a clear order to gather the mages under his command, asking only for the most capable ones so they can buy time. And in addition, he demands a strand of hair from the person closest to the Grand Duchess. As a result, we can feel the danger rising quickly, because this is no longer just anger but a calculated move, and this is the kind of plan that never leads anywhere good, making it clear that something serious is about to unfold. In the next scene, we see that it is finally time for the event, and Kanemia turns to Eiyan, asking if he is really okay and if they can go out to have some fun. However, he does not seem in the mood and simply says he is fine while questioning why they have to wear such annoying outfits. She calmly explains that today is the day the souls of the dead return and they dress like this so the dead can enjoy themselves comfortably, but he only responds briefly and admits to himself that he still does not understand. Meanwhile, Vanessa reassures her that everything is safe, and after that, Kanemia steps out and proudly shows her outfit, saying it matches the theme of little vampire cuties. At that moment, his eyes light up, and just as he is about to respond, the Behemoth twins interrupt at the same time, calling her adorable, and she happily accepts it while playfully saying that if they do not give her candy, she will bite them. Instead of being scared, Sarah and Lana eagerly offer candy and even ask to be bitten, which clearly confuses her, as she points out that they are supposed to be scared, and asks why she would still bite after receiving candy. They respond strangely, saying they even want to be bitten, and she turns to Eiyan, telling him he has to trade something to get candy too. He understands it in his own way and says he will kill everyone if he does not get candy, which only makes Sarah react even more strangely by calling it cute and asking him to go ahead. However, just when things seem chaotic, Sarah suddenly remembers something and brings out a dagger, offering it to Kanemia. She explains it was made from leftover mithril and mentions how thankful she was for the generous bonus, though Lana quickly interrupts and covers her mouth, trying to change the explanation while still insisting she accept it. She adds that it was designed to be worn like an accessory, almost like a necklace, and Kanemia immediately loves it, thanking both of them warmly. In response, they express even more gratitude and encourage her to enjoy the day, and the scene shifts back from strange and funny to warm. In the next scene, we see Kanemia walking out of the castle with Eiyan, and she happily says that she just met a behemoth and yet her candy basket is already full, and moreover, as if that was not enough, he casually drops more candies into her basket and tells her to take them too, and she reacts with surprise, wondering why he is giving her more. Yet he simply says it is because she is cute, which honestly makes the moment feel soft and a bit unexpected. Then she says she should empty the basket before going to Eiyan 1 and asks if he wants to go together. However, he is already dressed and ready but looks away toward the sky as fireworks go off, and then says she should go ahead first because he has something to do and will catch up later, and although she agrees, he leans closer and asks if she cannot be well without him, which makes her eyes widen as she answers back, and he simply agrees again, after which she tells him to hurry up and come, and as she walks away, she cannot help but wonder what he is doing. Then, in another scene, we follow Kanemia as she enters a building and calls out to Vanessa, asking why she did not respond earlier, and although she finds her there, something already feels off. Yet she continues and says she wants to empty her candy basket and asks where to put it. However, Vanessa suddenly takes her hand and she notices that it is cold, which makes her uneasy. And even though she says she will drink tea later since he will be coming soon, Vanessa insists she should drink it now while it is warm, and at that moment, things turn strange as she notices her struggling and then quietly warning her to run away and not drink it. But suddenly her tone changes as she smiles and tells her to drink, which shocks her deeply. Nah, this is where I would start running immediately. Then she tries to escape, yet Vanessa, now clearly controlled, threatens her by saying if she does not drink, she will kill the woman, and just then a butterfly appears, making her realize something is controlling her, and she quickly thinks that if the goal was to kill her, they would have used a knife already, not tea, and so, as Vanessa continues to pressure her, she finally agrees and takes the cup from her hands. In the next scene, we are faced with a grim moment as we see several dead bodies on the ground, and moreover, one man is still alive, struggling weakly. However, before he can recover, a voice comes from behind, and it is Eiyan, who steps in and strikes his head with his leg, speaking as if this is nothing to him, saying the man came to avenge his brother, yet this is all he has, which clearly disappoints him since he expected something more entertaining and was even ready to let him land at least one hit. But instead, the man lies there, pressed down, calling him a monster, and he reacts calmly, pointing out that he really is just like his brother since the same words were said before during the ambush. And as the man lies there thinking he only needs to hold on a little longer because the promised time is near, he continues mocking him, yet something feels off, and suddenly he turns his head and begins to think, realizing that something is wrong because the others are not attacking but instead are hesitating and keeping their distance as if they are trying to buy time. And then it hits him. His eyes widen as he connects everything to Kinemia, and at that very moment the man smiles and says the time has come as a bell rings. And honestly, that realization hits hard. This is the kind of moment where everything suddenly flips and you just know something bad already happened. Then, in another scene, we are taken to Kinemia, who is now sitting on the floor, tied up, and as she slowly comes to, she wonders where she is, noticing the chain on her hand and realizing she is completely restrained, which makes the situation even more tense. And just when she is trying to understand what is going on, a man walks in and speaks, revealing himself as Ryan, addressing her as the Grand Duchess of West, and she immediately thinks she has never seen this face before and questions who he is, then calls out for Vanessa, but he calmly tells her that the woman should already be asleep back at the Grand Duchy. And hearing this, she tries to stay composed and asks what he wants, offering money or land, even saying that if this is about a grudge against her family, she is willing to compensate. We see Ryan speaking with a cold tone, saying that a noble high-ranking mage like him would never care about things like money or land. Moreover, he mocks her for being clueless about the world, even pointing out that Eiyan never told her anything about mages, which makes Kinemia freeze as she begins to connect everything and realizes this might all be because of him. And as if that was not enough, he recalls something Eiyan once said about killing being too easy, and then opens a box filled with torture tools, continuing that ever since that monster took his right eye, he has been waiting for this day. Yet he will not let her die easily, and at that moment she understands that he is completely insane and knows she must escape, so she forces herself to stay calm and starts thinking of a way out, focusing first on the chain binding her hands, and suddenly she remembers the necklace and realizes she can use it to break free, although she knows any movement might make noise, and so she quickly begins to act, begging and crying to distract him, saying she was wrong and asking to be spared, even calling out randomly, but he snaps and shuts her up, calling kids annoying, yet she keeps acting scared while thinking she cannot hesitate even for a second. Then, just when the tension peaks, she moves fast and precise, breaking the chain in an instant, shocking him, and without wasting time, she uses the dagger to strike his eye, making him scream in pain as he tries to grab her, but she runs away immediately, and in anger he reaches out and shouts while holding his eye, calling out and summoning the magical butterflies again, ordering them to catch her no matter what. And as she keeps running, she notices one of the butterflies chasing her and quickly realizes she must hide, so she finds a place and stays still, covering her mouth to stay silent, yet his voice echoes that hiding is useless and that once he finds her, he will kill her on the spot, which only makes the moment more intense, and as she stays there in fear, she quietly calls out for Eiyan in her mind, hoping he will come and save her. In the next scene, we see Ryan holding his injured eye, shouting in anger as he calls Kinemia a rat and orders the butterflies to find the Grand Duchess at once, saying it should not be hard to catch one small girl, and moreover, he swears he will tear her apart the moment she is found. However, just then a voice calls his name from behind, and when he turns, he sees Eiyan Kreutz, which shocks him deeply as he begins to think about how this is even possible, wondering if all the people he sent as bait have already been defeated. Before he can recover, he is questioned again with anger about what he did to her, and although he tries to act calm, he begins sweating under the pressure, yet still answers with mockery. But suddenly everything changes as his eyes turn purple and he is struck with pain, screaming as he is forced to the ground, and even as he is asked again where she is, he refuses to answer and instead smiles, then laughs in a desperate way while talking about how the man who always looked down on him is now frantic, blaming everything on his title and status, and finally he lies by saying the Grand Duchess is dead, even pointing to bloodstains and claiming she suffered and blamed him before dying, which makes his eyes widen in shock. And in that moment he calls out her name again and again, releasing a great amount of magic power. Then, in another scene, we are taken to the Tower Master, where a sudden change in the air is felt as Benjamin notices something is wrong, saying the sky has turned dark and there is a strange presence that normal people cannot feel, and although he wonders if it is magic or related to Eiyan, the answer given is no, yet without delay the Tower Master decides to go find him, leaving instructions behind before departing, and meanwhile, we return to Kinemia, who is walking alone, feeling the sudden darkness and cold, realizing she has been wandering for over 30 minutes without finding a way out, and although fear begins to creep in, she refuses to give in to weak thoughts and reminds herself that he will notice something is wrong and come for her. However, just when she tries to stay strong, she hears footsteps approaching, and immediately her thoughts turn to the man from earlier. In the next scene, we see Kinemia suddenly freeze in shock as she notices Eiyan walking toward her, and she calls out to him, wondering if it is really him, and as he calls her name in return, she realizes it is truly him and runs straight to him, shouting his name again. However, as she gets close, she notices something unexpected. Tears are falling from his eyes, and this makes her panic as she holds his face and asks why he is crying, asking if something happened or if he is hurt again. Yet before she gets an answer, he pulls her into a tight hug and she is left stunned as he says he did not believe it. And when she asks what he means, he tells her he was told she was dead, which makes her react at once, calling out how terrible that lie is, and honestly, that kind of lie is just cruel. No one should joke like that, yet even though she admits she was ready to be angry since it felt like she was taken because of him, she cannot stay angry after seeing him like this, and even as he keeps saying sorry again and again, she gently tells him he does not need to apologize, while thinking in her mind that he must have been deeply shaken and that she needs to comfort him. Then, just when we think the moment will stay quiet, the Tower Master appears and she calls out to him, while he questions why she is there and begins to think through everything. Noticing that he looks unwell, sensing Ryan's magic still in the space, and seeing her safe while Ryan lies in blood nearby, and therefore he calmly pieces everything together before asking if she is hurt, and she assures him she is fine and that he is not injured either, and then she asks if they can return to the Grand Duchy because she is worried about the nanny who was taken, which he agrees to, although before leaving, he calls out to him and asks him to come to his room tomorrow because he has something to discuss, and he simply accepts. Back at the castle, we see the Tower Master speak to Eiyan and say they will return to the tower in 2 days, and that he must come along. However, he responds that he still has things to do here, yet the Master firmly tells him he cannot stay by Kinemia's side because doing so will only make things more dangerous for her, and then asks if that is really what he wants, and although he stays silent, the warning continues as he is told that where he stands next is death, and that he is becoming too emotional, and even though that may be normal at his age, he cannot afford it, especially when his power could have gone out of control if things were just a little worse, and at that point he finally responds that he understands, repeating that he knows, while the Master looks at him and thinks that even though it is painful to see him like this, he cannot soften his heart since he still has not fully grasped his power and cannot risk the same thing happening again, yet he interrupts and asks if learning to control his power and himself will allow him to stay by Kinemia's side, and the answer comes as yes, but only after 2 days apart, even though the time needed may take years or even a lifetime. Then, as if the weight of that moment settles in, we see him think deeply about the coming separation, calling her his friend and his love in his thoughts, and reflecting on how the day to part has already come, yet instead of sadness he tries to hold on to the idea that they will meet again and celebrate that future day. However, just when it feels too heavy, Kinemia suddenly calls out to him, waving and asking if he has been waiting long, and he calmly says it is fine and asks what she bought, and she happily says it is candy for the nanny after everything that happened. wanting to at least give a small gift, and then she suddenly notices something going on nearby and asks him to go check it out with her, and he simply smiles and agrees, calling her Mia. In the next scene, we see them walk over to another place, and Imani gives Clovis flowers, which makes her happy, and as they continue walking down a long path, she says it was fun, and that it feels like there is no place left for them to visit, and he agrees. However, she notices something and asks if he is feeling better now, which confuses him at first. And she explains that he seemed a bit down, and then gently adds that if it is about what happened before, she is really okay now, even mentioning that Vanessa has been worried too, and reminding him that everyone is safe and no one got hurt, and as a result, she shares something she always tells herself when she feels sad, saying that instead of trying to erase painful memories, it is better to cover them with happy ones, meaning that even if something bad happened, they can cover it together with good memories since they still have many happy times ahead, and she smiles and asks again for agreement. Then, just as he calls her Mia and is about to say something important, she suddenly turns her face away and looks up at the sky, noticing that the fireworks have already started, and suggests they move somewhere better since they cannot see clearly from there, and without hesitation he lifts her up, tells her to hold on tight, and begins flying, which leads them to the clock tower, and she is amazed and wonders why there, and he explains that it is the best place to watch, and as they settle there and watch the fireworks together, her eyes light up in awe, and she reacts with pure wonder, while he calmly asks if she can see them well, and she happily confirms that it is perfect since it is high up and there are no people, and he simply responds that he is glad. This feels like one of those quiet moments you don't want to end. In the next scene, we see Kanemia lost in thought, wondering whether her racing heart is simply because she was surprised. Yet she questions herself again, unsure if that is truly the reason. However, her thoughts are suddenly interrupted when Eiyan calls out to her and tells her he has decided to return to the Mage Tower. This makes her eyes widen as she asks when, only for him to calmly say tomorrow and that he will leave when his master departs. She turns to him in shock, asking why it is so sudden, while he explains that he needs to do something and apologizes for telling her so late. As a result, she thinks in her mind that she always believed he would leave someday, especially after trying so hard to push Mia away, yet she still tells him he should have said it sooner. And even though he admits he lacked the courage, she brushes it off and says it is fine since it is about time for him to return anyway, adding that they cannot leave the Mage Tower empty for long. However, he lightly asks if she is not going to stop him, saying he is disappointed. And she replies back in the same tone, asking if he planned to stay in her house forever and joking that she would charge rent, and honestly. Then, as if the mood shifts, he gently asks if he can hold her hand for a moment, and this surprises her, yet she still gives it, and he places a bracelet on her wrist, revealing it is a fate bracelet as a gift for their bond, even if it is a bit late, and she realizes it is something he made himself after learning in the embroidery room with special training, which makes her thank him and call it beautiful. But then she notices part of it glowing purple and recognizes it as the charm from the bracelet she once gave him, and he confirms that he swapped it so that one remains with him while this one is for her, explaining that every time he sees the blue gem, he will think of her, and asking if she will also think of him when she sees it, even worrying that she might forget him. Yet she immediately denies it and promises she will never forget, and he gives a soft smile and tells her he will return soon, and as they look at each other, both of them think the same thing in their hearts, that this is the day of parting, yet instead of holding on to sadness, they choose to believe they will meet again and hold on to that hope. This kind of goodbye hurts, but it also feels meaningful. 5 years later, we are taken to a busy market where people call out from all sides, trying to sell various things, and the place feels full of life. Someone is asking people to come see a new remedy for sore throat, while another offers medicine for fatigue, and even asks about body types, whether cold or warm. In the middle of all this, Jimmy walks through the crowd, wondering why the shop is so crowded, and even thinking they should move to a bigger place, yet at the same time, he feels relieved that the Grand Duchess puts her people first. Moreover, he questions the rumor that she is a villainess as if it makes no sense. Then, as he looks at the building, he realizes he has arrived at the right place, but the crowd is so thick there is barely any space, and consequently, he understands why the higher-ups are worried, thinking they must stop this growth before Hae Min-won becomes too powerful. He then decides he must find Shen Tian, calling him an old fox, and deal with him at once. However, just as he moves forward, he notices Kanemia, and she questions who he is, which shocks him so much that his eyes widen in disbelief, and he even thinks to himself in surprise, "My goodness, She tells him the place is off limits, yet he keeps thinking about how beautiful she is and even assumes she is just a worker, which leads him to judge her unfairly. He introduces himself as Baron Jimmy Mithralin and claims he got lost while admiring the garden, but she still reminds him that the place is restricted. Even so, he keeps thinking she is arrogant for speaking so freely. Just when he tries to explain again, a voice calls out, and Shantian appears asking about her experiments, which shocks him even more as he recognizes him instantly and wonders why he is here. When asked who he is, he quickly introduces himself again, but Kinemia calls him an intruder, and he panics, denying it and saying he only wanted to talk because she is beautiful. Then Shantian reacts, repeating his words in a cold tone, and suddenly hits him, sending him to the ground. That hit came fast, no warning at all. In the next moment, Shantian speaks up, saying that using the young lady as an excuse is bound to bring trouble, and as a result, we feel the tension around them. Then Kinemia quickly asks if he killed him, but Shantian calmly replies that he is only unconscious and they tied Jimmy up. Moreover, she points out how the others never seem to get tired, and he agrees, then goes further to explain that ever since she was praised by the Emperor for creating the Red Doom cure, people have been sent after her, again and again. We then get to know that the Red Doom cure is meant for a deadly fever spreading across the empire where victims' faces turn red before they die, and yet, even though they cannot control it, they still try to stop Hyamin Wan. Furthermore, he calls their actions petty and says they must be worried about losing power, while she responds that if they have time to interfere, they should be saving lives instead. However, he adds that the disease mostly affects commoners, so those fools choose to treat nobles first, and she reminds him that even the Grand Duchy is at risk, so they must stop it fast. Then she asks about the Jaryang grass, and he says it has not sprouted yet, explaining that it once grew in dungeons and growing it outside is difficult since plants struggle when taken from their home. Hearing this, she softly speaks to the plant saying sorry and that it must miss its home, which makes him react in confusion and call it strange. While she insists, maybe it will listen if treated like people, though he quickly shuts that down, saying plants do not grow just because you talk to them. Just when it feels like things might calm down, Vanessa suddenly runs in, calling out loudly, and she turns to her in surprise. She says an invitation has arrived while holding a letter, and at first she thinks it is just another letter which she would reject, and wonders why she rushed, but then she reveals it is not ordinary, but a debutante invitation. Immediately, her eyes widen in shock, while Shantian calls it wonderful news, and she is also happy, saying she had been worried she would never get one. However, instead of joy, she reacts with confusion, asking why she even received it and why she is being invited at all, and as if that was not enough, she grabs her head and shouts that she hates it. This reaction is so unexpected, I was sure she would be happy at first. In the next moment, we are made to understand what a debutante truly is, an event where young ladies and young gentlemen who have come of age are introduced into society, and moreover, in the empire, one powerful noble is chosen each year to host it. As a result, only those who receive that host's invitation can attend, and because of this, children spend years building connections, attending gatherings, and when they reach 17, they send gifts and flatter the host just to be invited. However, Kinemia stands there looking at the letter, confused, wondering how she received one when she has done none of those things. Meanwhile, Shantian relaxes on a chair, yet she suddenly tries to destroy the letter with a trowel, which makes him jump up in shock, shouting and asking how long she plans to act like this, then walking closer and telling her that being invited is a good thing since many people wish for it but cannot go, encouraging her to make friends and socialize. Even so, she responds with worry, explaining that the name she is known by in society is not really her but the past duchess, and that she is seen as someone who cannot fit in, fearing others will laugh at her or that she might say something foolish out of nerves. Nevertheless, he disagrees and says they may have invited her because they are curious about her, though she quickly rejects that idea. Then he explains that this year's event is hosted by Duke Roslin and suspects there is more behind it, especially since the others have been pulling back and tensions over the Red Doom issue are rising, suggesting an attempt to suppress the West. She then adds that the Duke also holds a personal grudge since his daughter once liked Louis's father, which led to a broken engagement and a failed business venture. As a result, he suggests she could simply not go, but she explains that refusing an invitation is a serious mistake in society. Therefore, he accepts it and tells her to just go and come back, placing a hand on her shoulder, and furthermore, encourages her to try to enjoy it, saying if she lets herself feel down, she will be the only one who loses, and even if others treat her badly at first, being sincere will surely make some people like her. In the end, she looks at him and quietly wonders what will happen if everyone there hates her. In the next moment, we see Shen reminding Kanemia that she is not alone, pointing out that many people truly know and care for her, including her nanny, retainers, the Huimin One family, the behemoths, and even the people in her territory. Kanemia then quickly asks why her brother is left out, and Shen explains that if he hated her, he wouldn't be standing there in the muddy field talking to her, emphasizing that he is one of the people who cherishes her most. Just then, as if on cue, Lo appears running towards her, and he immediately hugs her, telling her he is back. She asks if he finished his work well. He responds warmly, saying he missed her and spinning her around, which makes Shen comment that anyone would think they hadn't met for 10 years when it has only been 3 days. Lo notices her worried expression and asks what is troubling her, prompting her to explain everything about the debutante invitation. He immediately reassures her, saying everyone will surely like her and that there is nothing to worry about, even calling her cute. Kanemia admits she has never really made friends her own age and feels a bit nervous. Lo reminds her that she has Eiyan, which makes her pause and look down, a small shadow crossing her face. Shen quickly intervenes, elbowing him for bringing up that topic, and Kanemia forces a smile, saying it is all in the past, and tells them she needs to return to the office. As she walks away, leaving them behind, her thoughts linger on Eiyan, wishing, I would have preferred a letter from Eiyan rather than this invitation. We are taken back 5 years to see Kanemia writing letters to Eiyan. In the first, she greets him and asks if he is doing well at the Magic Tower, mentioning a book she read that said, Mages there cannot fly, and hopes he can visit soon because the Grand Duke's estate feels empty without him. She hands the letter to a guard, then begins another, expressing that she feels a little sad he has not written back but understands he is a Rikasha and must be busy. She writes about her own work preparing for the new Huimin branch, celebrating its opening, and how she baked the pie he used to like, promising to make more when he visits. Later, in another flashback, she writes again, hoping he could at least send a short hello, and then folds the letter and throws it away, leaving a trace of longing and worry about whether he will ever read it. In the present, multiple dresses are laid out before her as Vanessa reacts, exclaiming how pretty she looks and debating between a pink dress and a flashier golden one for her grand entrance. Kanemia insists she does not want to stand out, aiming to appear as if she were never there, even joking about wanting a dress that blends into furniture or wallpaper. Vanessa chides her for still being unmotivated and asks if she's been practicing dancing, and Kanemia admits she stepped on Romeo's foot about 5 times, which is a vast improvement from before. Vanessa celebrates the progress, remembering how she used to step on him more than 20 times at first, and Kanemia silently thinks, I think I would have said the same, noting her own lack of enthusiasm but understanding the effort she has put in. Kanemia listens as Vanessa explains that this year's debutante is unusual because the Duke himself is hosting it, likely because the Duchess of Roslin is still recuperating from a chronic illness. She mentions how devoted he is, supporting the church every year for her sake. Kanemia puts her hand on her chin and thinks carefully, realizing that maybe she wasn't invited just to be humiliated. Perhaps the Duke is interested in Huimin because of its miracle medicine for Red Doom, which earned praise from the Emperor and fame across the Empire. She reflects that the church's aggressive stance toward Huimin now makes sense if he is involved, but she reminds herself that she doesn't know the Duke personally and must respond sincerely, even if others approach her with bias. Night falls at the ball, and Kanemia walks toward the door as music fills the room. Ladies gossip about her, commenting that the young lady from the Salin family already has a dance partner, and wondering why the Grand Duchess of West has not arrived. They talk about her past fame in business, comparing it to their children's obsession with her toys, and some speculate about her appearance, saying rumors call her hideous or ill-tempered, even a demon. None of them have actually seen her, yet they continue to whisper, curious and fearful. Kanemia moves past the guards, knowing that today will finally reveal whether the rumors are true. From my view, I would have felt the same nervous curiosity if I were in her shoes. Enjoying this story so far? Comment Kanemia below for part 3. Bye now.